in this video, we're going to learn how to create a variety of value scales using graphite pencils. Value scales help us practice shading techniques and understand how light and dark work in a drawing. We will be in control of our pencils and learn different ways to show depth, contrast, and texture. So we will be using our little set of pencil, which has many different pencils inside. It goes from 2H, HB, B, 2B, 4B, and a 6B. We are going to start with the first value scale in our worksheet. So the first value scale is going to be based on pencil hardness, and each of the little square of this value scale is going to be labeled with the pencil that we have to use in that square, into that section. So we will start by doing this scale using a range of graphite pencils, from hard pencils like a 2H, HB, to softer pencils like our 2B, 4B, and 6B. All of our pencils are labeled to match our value scale. So the pencil will say 2H, and we're going to fill in that 2H square. The difference between hardness of pencil is what we will see in a second. The harder the pencil is, so our 2H and our HB, the lighter and finer the lines will be. While the softer our pencil is, so our 2H, 4B, and 6B, the darker and bolder the marks that those pencils create will be. So we're going to fill in each box from light to dark, switching pencil as we go. Try to keep your color even, keep the same pressure while using all of the pencils, try to stay inside of all of those squares, and just keep working one square at a time. So as you can tell, our 2H is going to be a lighter value. Even if I'm going over it a couple of times, I'm turning the paper, I'm going different directions when going over it. It is not really getting darker than what you're seeing right now on camera. So once we're done with our 2H, we're going to move to our next square. And that's going to be our HB pencil. As we're working with our HB pencil, we are already going to see that the lines are going to be bolder, slightly thicker than the ones we just created. It's going to be easier to blend nicely to create a smooth surface. And we're still going to basically fill in this whole square. I'm going over it a couple times, different directions, just to make sure that it's very smooth and nice. And I'm trying my best to stay within the lines just to keep it clean and keep the value scale nice and keep my craftsmanship good. So when I'm talking about keeping it smooth and nice and clean, I'm talking about not doing something like this. So keeping it uneven, scratchy, streaky, and not staying within that box. So just make sure that it looks nice and clean. Once we're done, we're going to move on with our B pencil to start our B square, and we will start filling that in. As you can tell, it's already going to be slightly darker than with the one we just created. Still a lot easier than our first one. So of our 2H pencil, it's going to look smoother, nicer, blend it in nice, stay within those squares, and finish up this square as well until we can start our 2B. With our softer pencils, it's going to be a lot easier to keep it nice and smooth and blended, and it's going to be a lot easier to fill in that square quicker and faster, and it's going to look smoother and darker. So just make sure you fill in that 2B, 4B, and 6B very evenly. And as you can tell, I'm going from diagonally to up and down to left to right, just to make sure that that square fills in nicely and I stay within those lines. Our 4B pencil is going to be darker than our 2B, and our 6B is going to look darker than our 4B as well. So we're going to fill those in very quickly, very nicely, very smoothly. And then we're just going to quickly take a look at our value scale and how it turned out. So when we look at this value scale, we're going to see that it goes from light to dark. That is value. So value in art means how light or how dark something looks. It is one of the seven elements of art. It helps us show depth, form, and contrast. When we use value in a drawing, we make a flat shape look three-dimensional. So it is like turning a circle into a sphere with shading. Value can range from the lightest light, so for example our white paper, to our darkest dark. So like our heavy pencil shading, in this case is our 6B. Next up is going to be our hatching value scale. Hatching means creating rows of parallel lines in order to show value. To make the value lighter, we keep the lines spaced out. To make the value darker, we place the lines closer together. So we're going to start with our first square and draw those lines pretty far apart. So once we're done, we will notice how we build value by controlling the line spacing and the pencil pressure. So try to keep the line consistent and straight for this one. Usually when I'm done with my first one of these value scales, I will go to my last one just to see how light and how dark my value scales are going to look, and then to adjust what my medium to light, and medium to dark are going to look like. So for this one, as you can tell, my lines are still very parallel in my last square. I am trying to keep my hand steady. I'm trying to stay within my square. I'm not going out of it. I'm starting at the top and ending it at the side. I am doing diagonal lines. You can keep your lines vertical or horizontal. Doesn't really matter. I just like how diagonal end up looking. You can fill in if you missed a little space. If your lines slightly overlap, that is still okay. Just make sure that you fill in that square nicely and smoothly. We're then going to move on to our middle square, and we are going to keep the line slightly more distance than our darker value, but slightly closer together than our very light value. So make sure your lines are still parallel, there's space between them, they're spaced out pretty evenly, and you fill in that entire next square. Once I'm done with those, usually I will do my medium to light and medium to dark. So medium to light, the lines are going to be spaced out approximately between the space that there is between the lightest and our medium value. So we're going to keep that space pretty even still, keeping our line pretty spaced out. So we're going to see how the value is starting to change and how we're going from the lightest value to our medium one. And lastly, we're going to work on our medium to dark value, and we're going to keep our lines closer than our medium value, but slightly further apart than our darkest value. So just make sure those lines still parallel, still within that box, still straight. So once we are done with this, we're going to see that our first square is going to be looking a lot lighter than our last one, and it should still look like a value scale. So from light to medium light to medium dark to our darkest value. So next up is going to be our cross-hatching value scale, which is going to be very, very similar to the one we just created. We're just going to basically add a different set of parallel lines, but going into a different direction. So as you can see, I'm starting as I did my hatching, and then I'm going to do parallel lines crossing the ones I just created. You can go over those lines many different ways, many different times. The more times you will go over them, the darker the value will become. So for the purpose of this worksheet, we're just going to go the crossing. So just going over them once. But just make sure you start with a single layer of lines and then keep adding more and more depending on how dark you want it to look. So I'm working on my darkest value. Lines are going to be a lot closer together than the one we just created. And then I am going to create lines going the opposite direction. So as you can see, my darkest value is going to be looking a lot darker than my first one. And as before, I'm going to be working on my mid-tone value. So I'm going to be working on that middle square between the 5. And we are just going to create the mid-tone value. I'm just going to space my lines evenly, and as you can tell, I'm just going to go directly into my mid-tone to dark tone just to see how my lines are going to be spaced for that one as well. And then I will cross hash them both. I will then work on my last square for this value scale, which is going to be my medium to light value. So I'll make my parallel lines at an even distance, and then I'll make lines that intersect with those and create my medium to light value. So once I look at them, I will see that it still goes from light to dark, and it's going to look like a value scale. Up next is going to be our Pointillism value scale, which is also called Stippling. This means building value with tiny dots. So for our lightest value, we're going to keep those dots very spread apart, as you can see, and then we are going to be working on dotting all of our other squares in our value scale. So when you're dotting, make sure that your dots look like dots and not rough little lines like I'm showing you right now. So make sure they stay dots and they look even and they look nice. So try to keep your pencil straight. That will help keep your dots dots. This one is the one that will take the most time. So I guess make peace with it. Stippling for darker values, we will make the dots super close together, more dense. So there's going to be a lot of dots. This technique definitely takes a lot of patience. And it's great for practicing control of your pencil. So as you can see, we're already in our middle one. Our first two are going to be the fastest ones. So the lightest and the medium to light. The medium one is still going to take a little bit of time. And then our darkest ones are going to take a lot more time. For these value scales, you can think about changing your pencils if you want. So you can start with a lighter pencil and go to use a 6B for our darkest value, since it's going to make more defined, darker marks, or you can keep using the same pencil. Both things work. It's just your preference. So for mine, I'm just using my 2B for all of it, but you can just decide what to do with your own. And I will speed this up a lot faster just because you do not want to sit here and see me make a million dots, which is going to take a little bit of time. For this value scale, you will see as I get done that it's going to still go from light to dark. So that is what we want to try to achieve with this value scale. We also want our darkest dark to look dark and not just still with a couple of dots. The next value scale we're going to create is going to be our Scribbling value scale. So instead of our neat lines or dots, we'll use small control scribbles. So the lightest value will have fewer, looser scribbles. With dark values, we will be more dense and overlapping scribbles. So keep it messy, but still keep it intentional. So stay within those lines. Stay within our value scale. Do not go outside of the lines. Think about your craftsmanship. Think about creating that range of values, so from light to dark. So as you can tell, I'm still going to try to do from my lightest. I'm going to go straight to my darkest value just to see how I can then fill those other values in. As you can tell, my scribbles are still controlled, still within the lines, and I'm still creating that value tonal difference value scale. For this next value scale, I suggest using whatever pencil you want, but you can only use one. I'm using my 4B, but I suggest not using your 2H or one of the hardest pencils. So for this value scale, we are going to play with pencil pressure, so how much we press that pencil into the paper. So we will use that pressure, very, very light pressure in our first square to create a very light value. Then we will gradually increase our pressure to make it darker. This will help you practice controlling your hand pressure instead of switching pencils. So as you can see, my value in this first light square is going to be very, very light, and it is the lightest. I can probably keep it with my 4B pencil. It looks slightly streaky, but I'm going over it like very lightly a couple of times to try to make that square look the best that it possibly can look like. And then I'll move on to my other values. So I might just do my middle value scale tone, where I keep my pencil pressure pretty normal. Just try to keep it even, try to keep it smooth, and fill in that square. I will then do my darkest value. As you can see, I'm going diagonally right now, but I'm then going to go up and down, left to right, just to make sure that the square is nicely filled. And as you can see, as I'm putting that second layer, my value is getting darker. So I'm keeping the pressure heavier, and I'm doing multiple layers to reach that dark value. I will then work into filling in the last couple of squares, the last couple of values on my value scale, and then we will get done with this one. And as you can tell soon, my medium to light value scale, it's going to look slightly too close to my medium value scale color. So I'm just adding a light layer on top of that one as well. So as you can look at it, it's going to go from light to dark. I'm just adjusting a little bit of a couple of things, and then we'll move on to our next value scale, which is going to be our blended gradient value scale. So we're still gonna go from dark to light. We can decide if you want to use multiple pencils or just one pencil. That is your choice. The only thing is just try to keep it blended. So do not keep it streaky, do not make it streaky, stay within those lines, make it even looking. If you want to use from your 2H to your 6B, that is totally fine. I'm probably going to slightly do that just to be able to have that very light. Just make sure you go over it, you play around with the pressure of those pencils as well, that you keep it very neat and smooth. So our gradient is where we will basically blend it smoothly from light to dark without visible breaks. So I don't want to see a very dark chunk and right next to it a lighter chunk. We want it to look smooth, like a smooth transition. So we'll start with a very light touch and then gradually also press harder, change pencil as we move across. Try to keep it even, seamless, no obvious lines between sections. And as you can see, we're just going to go over a couple of parts a couple of times. So don't worry if your value scales are not perfect. This is just a practice. The more you work on these techniques, the better control of your pencil you will have. Just remember that value is what makes objects look three-dimensional. So practicing these exercises is the foundation of realistic shading, and it is very helpful. So thanks for following along. You can pause throughout the video, you can replay certain sections, and have fun shading.